have the perfect person to ask, who happens to be sitting here with me on set. So joining me now is Senator-elect Adam Schiff of California. He was a member of the House Select Committee that investigated January 6th. So this was some big news, not unexpected news necessarily today, but you were here just yesterday, and you were asked what you thought should happen with these cases, and you said that the cases shouldn't be dismissed. They should be deferred until after he leaves office. Does that mean you think there was an alternative to what Jack Smith did today?
Yes, I think there was an alternative. The alternative would have been to postpone further proceedings in the case until after he left office. Now, what Jack Smith did is seek to dismiss the case without prejudice. That means they can bring charges against Trump again once he leaves office. But it is nevertheless a very serious distinction, because the status quo now is no charges against the president. You would have to upset that status quo to later bring charges again, as opposed to merely postponing the proceedings, in which case the presumption is they continue when he leaves office. Now, Jack Smith relied on the opinion of lawyers within the department who said that they thought it was required by the Constitution to dismiss the case, but it isn't required by the Constitution. There's nothing that would interfere with his performance of the office, whether the case is dismissed without prejudice or merely postponed. So I think this is a serious mistake by the department. It compounds the mistake that you alluded to, which is they waited a year before they even brought this case forward or began the investigation. And then you have the Supreme Court with its immunity decision, and now you have a potential nominee in Pam Bondi who is saying she's going to prosecute the prosecutors. All of that goes against what Jack Smith said in his brief motion, which is that no one's above the law. So we're hearing that phrase a lot, but we're not giving validity to it by these actions.
Now, this is such this is pretty significant that you think it's you have a kind of a different interpretation than what the Department of Justice advised Jack Smith and his team to do. One of the arguments that he also has been making, according to Department of Justice reporters, is that Trump's team would have just come in and they would have fully dismissed it outright anyway, and that this allows him to frame it in that the facts of the case haven't changed. Do you agree with that, or you think that's not a good enough?
No, I don't agree with that. First of all, yes, Trump's appointees would come and they would move to dismiss the case, but the court would make the decision as to whether it should be dismissed or whether it should be postponed. There's another principle of the law that says you don't get to be your own judge and jury. So if Donald Trump can appoint a prosecutor to be his judge and jury and effectively order him to dismiss the case, that runs afoul of that principle, too. But even if he were successful and a court were to grant that motion, then that's on Donald Trump. It's not on the department. And I think that's significant, too. So I think this compounds the mistake the department made by delaying so long before initiating the investigation of those who were higher up, like Donald Trump. And it just sets a terrible precedent that essentially the presidency of the United States is a get-out-of-jail-free card. That's not what that office is for.
One of the things that could have happened, and I realized I was working in the Biden administration at the time, but not for the Department of Justice, is there could have been a special prosecutor appointed on the first day, right? It's possible.
Yes.
Would that have made a difference?
Well, I think if Jack Smith had been appointed on the first day, it would have made a big difference, because he moved with alacrity. You know, I have to give him credit. He moved with expedition. It was the department that didn't move quickly, except for the foot soldiers. It moved rapidly with those who broke into the Capitol, beat police officers, but it waited a long time, and in fact may have waited indefinitely if the January 6th committee hadn't brought all that evidence before the American people. It shouldn't take Congress to do that. They should have done that on their own.
You've referenced a couple of the things that could have been done differently in the past. And if you missed any, I do want you to share them. Looking forward, we're not guaranteed there won't be. I mean, Trump is going to be president, but there won't be another figure who tries to test the system in this way. Are there things, you're a senator-elect, you don't know what committees you'll be on yet, but that you wish that the Senate or Congress would do to better protect and prevent this type of activity from happening in the future?
There are a number of things. In fact, we put a package together called the Protecting Our Democracy Act, which got through the House, but we weren't able to get through the Senate last session. But it won't get through this Republican House and Senate, and so we won't be able to reestablish those guardrails. What we're really going to depend on is whether Republican senators in particular will demonstrate the willingness to uphold the checks and balances in our system. We'll give meaning to that advise and consent process. We'll hold the administration accountable. The track record is not particularly encouraging if you look at the first 4 years of Donald Trump. But the rejection of Matt Gaetz does give us room for hope that the Senate on both sides of the aisle may come to agreement that we need certain guardrails or we're going to head too far in the direction of autocracy.
Now, Pam Bondi is who Trump has nominated to replace Matt Gaetz, who was the nominee for 8 days. I believe that's correct. There's still questions, and I said this yesterday, that should be asked about her. And I know you've said something similar. What do you think people should dig into further? She's obviously an election denier. What concerns you, or what more would you like to know about her background? I
was just thinking 8 days, that's 1.5 Scaramucci's roughly.
Right, exactly. Poor Scaramucci.
Well, you know, I would begin with her participation in the big lie. She was out there peddling the fiction that Donald Trump won Pennsylvania 4 years ago, that they were essentially ballots mailed to dead people, and there was ballot dumping and all the rest of this. Is she going to maintain that fiction, that falsehood, that big lie? And is she willing to do that under oath? If she's willing to dissemble under oath, that's not someone you want to look for in an attorney general. But also her threats to prosecute the prosecutors. I mean, let's remember that evidence was provided to a grand jury. Those grand jurors found that Donald Trump committed multiple crimes. And even the Republicans who use this Trumpian refrain of deep state and weaponizing the Justice Department, they don't really deny the facts. They don't deny that Donald Trump had boxes and boxes of documents in Mar-a-Lago, and you know, many were highly classified. They don't deny that he tried to obstruct that investigation. They don't deny that he incited a violent attack on the Capitol. They don't deny any of those things. They simply parrot his deep state talking points. So is she going to deny those things? Is she going to go after people in the Justice Department who legitimately brought these investigations? Those are questions I'm certainly going to want to ask, and those are questions she's going to have to answer. We're
going to talk more about this, but also you are the former chairman of the House Intel Committee. I want to talk to you about some of those national security nominees. We're going to sneak in a very, very quick break, and we'll be right back with Senator-elect Adam Schiff.
For more than a decade, Farxiga has been trusted again and again and again. Ask your doctor about Farxiga.
What do we want more of? More laughs, more hangouts. Yeah, more of all this stuff. But getting older also means more risk of serious flu, COVID-19, and RSV. Vaccines lower your risk, so you can keep doing more.
Listen, I might not be a relationship expert, but I do have some hacks. They say, Lauren, what's the secret to a long, sustained relationship?
It's Blue Chew.
Blue Chews.
Blue Chew?
Blue Chew. Blue Chew.
Blue Chew. Blue Chew.
Blue Chew, baby! Blue Chew is an online subscription-based service that sends these affordable tablets directly to your home. No one even has to know. Except for me. I'm not going to tell anyone.
I don't know of any intelligence work that she has done. So she is, in terms of the intelligence community, very unqualified. Plus, she is potentially compromised and could be, and there are questions about whether or not she is now a Russian asset.
You believe that she could be a Russian asset?
I think that she is someone who is wholly backing and supportive of Putin, and I worry that she will not have America's best interest at heart.
Potentially compromised, questioned about whether or not she is now a Russian asset. That was a sitting U.S. Senator, Tammy Duckworth, talking about Donald Trump's choice to be the country's next director of national intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard. Senator-elect Adam Schiff is back with me, as I mentioned before the break. He's the former chairman of the House Intel Committee. And I know you've said you wouldn't use that same language or just describe her in the same way, but you have said you had profound concerns. One of the arguments I've heard made is the intelligence community is a big world. It's full of public career servants. They can protect from someone like her at the top. What do you think about that argument?
No, I don't think that's the case. Well, first of all, I think she combines inexperience with bad judgment, which is not particularly the kind of combination you're looking for in the head of the intelligence agencies. And just looking at inexperience, she hasn't even served on the Intelligence Committee in the House. She has no experience, I think, in the military with intelligence matters. So she is completely inexperienced in an area where the programs are deeply complicated. Learning about them takes years. When you're a new member of the Intelligence Committee, it will take you at least a couple of years just to familiarize yourself with the different systems, with how the IC, the Intelligence Committee, operates. Very, very steep learning curve. So she starts with no experience. But also, when you look at her judgment, defending Russia's invasion of Ukraine, echoing Kremlin talking points, taking meetings, going all the way to Syria to take a meeting with Bashar al-Assad, a murderous dictator, gasses his own people, claiming that this is not someone who's an enemy of the United States, at a minimum, shows terrible judgment. And the problem is that our allies are not going to share intelligence with us if they don't trust the person running the intelligence agencies. I think back to that meeting, which was well photographed, of Donald Trump in the Oval Office with the Russian ambassador and maybe the foreign minister, I can't remember, both participants. And there was public reporting that he had shared with them intelligence that came from a foreign source, without saying whether that was accurate or inaccurate. That's the kind of thing that causes foreign intelligence agencies to dry up their intelligence, not share it with us. Now, they'll still share some things, but the fact they won't share other things with us makes the American people less safe. And so if our allies don't trust her, if there's reasons they shouldn't, that's a real problem.
This is such an important piece for people to understand about our allies and partners around the world not sharing intelligence. Obviously, you can't get, you're not going to get into any specifics really, but broadly speaking, in terms of protecting the American people, this could include things like threats against the United States, threats against our foreign bases. What are the other types of things that our allies have that they share with us we might not have access to?
Well, they can share information, for example, that may come from a very well-placed human source or that comes from a well-placed technical source. That intelligence may be really important to protecting us against a terrorist threat, for example. But more than that, if that intelligence is shared either intentionally or unintentionally through negligence by the head of our agencies or by the President of the United States, then they're going to cut us off. It will jeopardize that source and everything else that might have come from that source. So that's a real problem. And we just can't have someone that has poor judgment advising the president at a minimum. This is the other job of the Director of National Intelligence. They oversee all of the intelligence agencies. They have to manage competition between the agencies, priorities for the agencies. But they also advise the president. And you want that person giving the president advice to have good judgment. The president-elect already has this very unhealthy, dangerous predilection for foreign despots. We don't need someone else whispering in his ear that Putin is his friend or that Bashar al-Assad is his friend. So that, too, is a real concern.
I know you've said there are some nominees like Marco Rubio who you feel are qualified for the role. I'm sure you'll question them if you're on the committee. Is Tulsi Gabbard a person at this point you're clear you'd vote no on, or have you made that decision yet?
The only one I was perfectly clear I was a no on if I had the chance to vote was Matt Gaetz. I've had too much exposure to him in the House of Representatives to think that he would be qualified for anything. The others, I want to hear them out. Even Tulsi Gabbard, I'll hear her out. I have the serious concerns I have outlined about her and about Pam Bondi. But as you say, there are a great many other nominees that seem far less problematic, that clearly have the experience. And, the other thing that I want to wait for with all these nominees is Trump is not vetting them. Or if he is, he's not vetting them in a traditional way. He's not having the professionals do the vetting. He's probably having people vet them who tell him what he wants to hear. And so the Senate is going to have to do the heavy lifting with the vetting. And I want to make sure that that's done before I make a final judgment.
Do you think that the Senate committee should hold these nominees until there's an FBI background check?
Well, I think they need to either do the investigations themselves or get the Bureau to do the investigations. But, you know, this is for the benefit of the American people. It's also for the benefit of the president. We want someone serving the president that's not compromised by some illegal activity that they were engaged in or some other compromising behavior. And that's not something that people tend to volunteer. So you want to have a thorough process to bring that out.
No question. There's a reason there's a thorough process in place that Democrats and Republicans have used for decades. Senator-elect Adam Schiff, thank you so much. I can't wait to see what committees you're going to be on, to see who you'll be questioning. It was great to see you.